I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Wolfeboro Public Library's Basic Computer course. And just to be clear here, this is actually a two-part course. Part 2 is next Wednesday, same time, 10 to noon. Today is all about how to use, basically how to use your computer, assuming you know nothing about it. It's nothing about the next part, which is part 2, which is genealogy research. So we decided we make it a two-part class rather than teaching genealogy research, which frankly I don't know much about. Today is just going to be how to use your computer, especially a Windows 10 or Windows 11 computer. Next Wednesday, we taught by a different person. Dee will teach genealogy research. So if you're not interested in that, you don't have to come next week. And then we had a few people, or at least one I know of, that didn't need basic computer instruction, so he didn't come today, but he's coming next week. All right? So before we start, let me take a little poll so I know who I'm talking to. If you have a computer, who has a Windows computer, either here or at home? Okay. And I see you have probably an iPad here too.
Yeah, because my other's a desktop, so that's
Yeah.
what I really use, but this is sort of...
Okay, that's fine. And does anybody have a Mac computer? That's a Mac computer? Okay, so we've got one of those. All right, great. So I thought since this is a sort of an ab initio course, you don't have to know anything about computers, I'd start by going over some basic terms. Can everybody see the whiteboard okay? Even over there, you can see okay, Dwayne? So these are terms that you hear all the time. They're actually computer terms, computer science terms, but they've almost become marketing words because you see them in commercials all the time and people talk about them. I'm not sure they know exactly what they mean, so we're going to go over some of these. The first one is CPU. Does anybody know what CPU stands for? Yes?
Central Processing Unit?
Central Processing Unit. Excellent. So what that is the brains of the computer. It's in every computer out there and at home. It's a little called a chip is the nickname, sort of. It's about this big. And believe it or not, if you've seen a chip, the real chip, the inner components are really about this big, like an inch wide or maybe even a little less. The other part is a protective and where they put the circuit pins in. The actual chip, which will have several billion transistors in it, is even smaller than the physical chip. What's a transistor? It's an electronic component, and in the computer world, it basically goes on and off. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But that's what a CPU is. I'm going to show you when we actually start using the computer how to find out what chip you have on your computer. Your computer will tell you. So that's the first term. Central Processing Unit, nobody calls it that. They either call it the CPU or the chip. Two major manufacturers are Intel and AMD. And by the way, I came across an interesting fact just the other day talking about transistors. Every CPU has many, many transistors in it. Every day in the whole world, guess how many transistors are made? Every day. 1,000 trillion. Every day. Yeah. Okay. Next term, bits and bytes. I had a patron just yesterday, and you heard about it through the wall there, that she had, I think it was 2.9 gigabytes of memory left on her phone. She said, okay, what's a byte? You hear that term even on commercials, and you read it in ads and so forth, bits and bytes. What's a bit and what's a byte? A bit is, and I got to write on my whiteboard a little bit, is a acronym that's a combination of binary digit. And they combine those two words into bit. And it turns out that computers use binary arithmetic, which consists of zeros and ones. We use digital arithmetic. For instance, we'll have the number 10. That means 1 10 and 1 0. I used to be a math tutor in school, and the little kids in kindergarten, you hold up a card that says this, and they yell out, 1 10 0, 10. We don't think about that. We just go 10. 10 is 10 things. It's 1 10 and 0 ones. Well, you can create a whole a whole numeric system on just zeros and ones. And that's how computers work. Why is that? In the 1940s, they used to build, oh, what happened to my picture here? They used to build computers that did digital arithmetic just like we do. And it turns out that that's very complicated. The circuits were very complicated. It was kind of not a very elegant solution. And a guy that you've probably not heard of named Claude Shannon came up with the idea, use binary arithmetic, base 2, and have electronic components. In his day, it was tubes or relays. Now it's transistors that can be in one of two states, on or off. On represents a 1 and off represents a 0. And when you do that, the design of computers was very, very simple. And he wrote a paper espousing that idea, and it revolutionized the computer industry. Unfortunately, the general public wasn't really aware of it. His paper, I read it, is very complicated to understand. He was a mathematician. But this idea revolutionized the design of computers. And I think it's one of the greatest inventions of the 20th century for that reason. Imagine today without computers. You can't start your car without a computer. A computer measures your air-fuel ratio and adjusts it. That's why when it was 20 below and you had your car outside, it probably did start, because it's just runs so much better now than the old day in the 60s and 70s where you had a choke and the car probably wouldn't start at attempts like that. Now it does, because computers are so much more accurate. So I think that was one of the greatest inventions of the 20th century that he didn't patent it, unfortunately. If he did, he'd be a trillionaire. And he really didn't even get much notice about that. So anyway, long story short, this is a bit. A bit is either a 0 or a 1. What's a byte? A byte is 8 bits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It turns out that computers like to move data in chunks of 8 bits, called a byte. Okay, so that's what a byte means. You have to know what a bit is first, and now you know what a byte is. And I didn't mention I was talking about the CPU, but believe it or not, really at the very elemental level, all the CPU does is move around zeros and ones. Do basic arithmetic, put these in a special memory called a register, compare one register to another. Everything it's doing is just moving zeros and ones around. Even if what you're seeing in your computers, it's showing a DVD. It's making millions of calculations every second to do that. If it's simulating a rocket engine, that's what it's doing. If it's simulating an atomic bomb exploding, that's what it's doing. On the processor level, at the very elemental level, it's moving zeros and ones. Why are there so many transistors in a CPU? Because each transistor can be on, which is a 1, or off to a 0. You put billions of them together, you can do a lot of math. Okay, so a bit is a single binary digit. Nobody calls it that. Everybody calls it a bit. And a byte is 8 of them grouped together. That's why you see everything in computers is a multiple of 8. I'm guessing that every computer out there is a 64-bit processor. 64 is 8 times 8. You'll never see a 65-bit processor or even a 70-bit processor. Everything works in chunks of 8. All right, so this is another marketing term. What is a gigabit? What does that mean? So we know what a bit is. What does giga mean? Giga is a qualifier that means 1 billion. 1 billion bits. And it's written capital G, small b. Capital G, capital B is gigabytes. T stands for tera. That's a trillion. So a capital T and a capital B is a trillion bytes. And now I'm going to cover hard drives next. Hard drives are getting to be in the terabyte range. You can buy a 2 terabyte hard drive for Amazon for maybe $100. But you couldn't do that only a few years ago. That's a lot of memory. Okay? So that's what we're going to talk about next. Hard disk drives and solid state drives. And I've got an example of one here. IBM invented the first hard drive, called it the Winchester. It wasn't this small. It was the size of a refrigerator, basically, right? And they called it the Winchester drive. That name didn't stick, or maybe because everybody else wasn't allowed to use it, they just called it a hard disk drive. What a hard disk drive does, you see this little round, can everybody see that? I know it's pretty small. Okay, that's a spinning disk in there. And picture a record player, record spinning around, and a little arm is moving across that disk, putting zeros and ones on there magnetically. And it's called writing when you put it on there, reading it when you take it off. And there's not just one disk, there's a whole bunch of them stacked together. And that arm, unlike a record player, doesn't touch the record. It floats right above it, very, very delicately, like only 1 or 2 nanometers above it. In fact, this has to be sealed, vacuum sealed, because if air gets in here, a particle of dust or a particle of smoke, back when people used to smoke, if that got in there, to that arm, that looked like a rock. That's how tight the dimensions were, and the disk would crash. So this hard drive, unlike the RAM I'm going to talk about next, when you store a program or any kind of data on here and you remove power, you turn the computer off, the data stays on here. That's called non-volatile memory. It will last years. This drive is sitting on my desk, and if there's any information on here for the last time we've used, it's still on here. So again, this has to spin. It spins at the newer ones, and I'm sure this one does, is 7,200 RPM. That's very fast. And that little arm moves like this. You can't even see it. It's moving back and forth. Because when the computer says, find me this memory, it has to find it on this disk, which is spinning around, and then transmit it to the computer. And let's talk about our newfound knowledge of the gigabytes. Let's see how big this drive is. What does it say? It says 500 GB. So this disk is 500 gigabytes. And I'll tell you this too, just interestingly. Whenever they talk about the size of a disk drive, they always use bytes. Okay? When they talk about internet speed, like Verizon says, you can upgrade to gigabit Ethernet, gigabit speed. The speed of the internet is always measured in bits. And they do that because the number, if we have 2 bytes, that's 16 bits, right? So the bits number is always bigger, so it sounds better. Gigabit speed, they just use it to make it sound better. But on disk drives, they always use bytes. Okay, this is being supplanted by, oh, I don't have one here, but it's about this size. What's called a solid state drive. It's about this size. It has no moving parts. It uses a different method to read and write bits and bytes, so it's much faster, and it uses less power. So it's much better than a spinning hard drive. Looking at the machines around the room, I'm thinking that all of you have solid state drives in there. You have to get a pretty old laptop or a desktop nowadays to have a spinning hard drive. So the other method of non-volatile memory is a solid state drive. There's a third one that I'm going to go over later, and this is called a thumb drive. Can anybody think of why this is a thumb drive? Right. Okay. It uses a type of memory similar to this. There's obviously no moving parts in here. Okay. All right. The other type of memory, and another term you'll hear if you go to buy a laptop or any kind of computer, is RAM. They'll say there's 8 gigabytes of RAM in there. Okay, I guess that's good. What does that mean? RAM is volatile memory. Here are 2 pieces of RAM called sticks of RAM. This is 4 gigabytes of RAM, and this is 4 gigabytes of RAM. You can actually install this in your computer yourself. If you can open up the back of the computer, and you could watch a YouTube video on how to do that. If it's a desktop, make sure you pay attention because there's high voltage in the back of a desktop, and you have to take that out before you open it. But I've done it. These just pop out, and you can pop new ones in. In fact, if you wanted to upgrade your memory, this is 4 gigabytes. You might order one from Amazon or somebody that's 8 gigabytes. So you put 2 of those in, now you have 16 gigabytes of RAM. So what is RAM? RAM stands for Random Access Memory. And random access means the computer can find out any part of memory on there without looking through the whole thing. In other words, back in the 1960s, they used to use magnetic tape to store data. And picture a roll of tape 40 feet long all rolled up. If the part of the memory you wanted was on the last foot of that tape, you had to look through all the others. It had to spin through it and get to the very end to find that. Remember the science fiction movies from the 1960s? They always showed a computer. It was a big thing, flashing lights all over the place, and it had 2 reels of tape going like this, constantly back and forth. That's why it had to go to where the memory was. RAM, the computer can go right to where the memory is and not have to go through all the other memory that it's not looking for. When this was invented, the good news was it was many, many times faster in reading and writing than a hard drive. The bad news was it only lasted for about 3 milliseconds, 3/1000ths of a second, and then it erased itself. So I always wonder what happened when they invented that. I got good news and bad news. I invented a new type of memory. It's fantastically faster than a hard drive, but it only lasts for 3/10ths of a second, or 3/1000ths of a second. So I'm guessing another engineer said, well, I'll just build a circuit that re-energizes it 1,000 times a second, and we'll keep going. Will it work? Yeah, but as soon as we turn the computer off, the memory will die. That's okay. Before we turn the computer off, if there's anything in RAM, we'll transfer it to the non-volatile memory, and it will stay there. And then when we start up the computer again, we'll just transfer it back from here to here, because we don't want to use this. This is too slow for the computer to keep working with. It has to be, the memory that the computer's using has to be in RAM. And that's this method we still use today. Okay? By the way, if I'm trying to do these terms because I'm going to be mentioning these, and you can't talk about them without defining them. But I'm sure I'll say something that I didn't realize you don't know what it means. Please stop me. This is a beginner's class. Mike, you just said this, and I don't know what that means. Can you tell me what that means? And we'll back up. Okay? Operating system. I just put OS, but technically it's operating system. What is an operating system? Why do we need an operating system? Remember the CPU I told you about to begin with? The CPU inside your computer without an operating system would just be sitting there doing nothing. A good analogy is picture a brand new 2023 Corvette, beautiful car with no driver. How fast does it go? Doesn't go at all. What's the engine sound like? It can't start. It's got a transmission. How do you shift into drive? You can't. There's no driver. The operating system is like the driver. It makes everything work together. Very, very important. It used to be there were only 2 operating systems. If you brought a laptop into my IT office, I know it was either a Mac or a Windows. And by the way, a Windows computer is also called a PC. When IBM came out with their first personal computer, they called it a PC. Even though there were Macs out there that were personal computers, you could buy one, but they didn't coin that term. And now PC has come to mean any small computer or desktop computer that has the Windows operating system in it. Okay, so there were only 2 operating systems that were out there, Windows and Mac. Now today there's a third one called the Chromebook that uses the Chrome operating system. I have one of those at home. I really like it. It's really nice to use. It's simple. There are some other operating systems. There's something called the Linux operating system. Not many people have a laptop with that on there, although you can. Linux operating system is free, by the way. All you have to do is download it from the internet. And it used to be there weren't a lot of applications to use with that, but now there are. And then the mother of all operating systems is Unix. Unix was invented by Ma Bell to do their telephone switching, and it's still used today. In fact, the Mac operating system is based on Unix. Now, for tablets, they also have operating system. In the Apple world, it's called iOS. Anybody ever figured out what I stands for, like an iPhone and iPad? But it's the same I with OS after it, iOS. And a Galaxy tablet or an Android tablet will have an Android operating system. So it's very important to know how to work with your operating system. Your operating system controls everything. All right, Are there any questions on those terms? Okay, beautiful. All right, so now I'm going to start to go over the different parts of the computer very, very slowly, okay? So first of all, take a look at your keyboard. You can see it looks kind of like the keyboard of a typewriter, which is where it came from. There's a few extra keys on there. There is one key called the Windows key. It should be towards the bottom left. If you have a Macintosh, you don't have that, but I think you have what's called an Apple key, if I remember right. But here's what the Windows key looks like. Here's the key, and then there's looks like a window frame. Everybody see that? That's called the Windows key. And when we do our Windows shortcuts, I'll show you what that's for. You also have, to the bottom left, you have a control key. It has CTRL on it. You have number keys at the top. You might have a number pad to the right. And then at the very top, you have some function keys. You don't have, oh, look at this, you have a Chromebook.
Yeah, I do.
Chromebooks don't have a Windows key because Windows. Good. So we have a Chromebook. Somebody has a Mac, right? You have a Mac.
Show me, please, Lee.
You have a command key. I think that's a basic, yeah.
Okay, basic.
And I'm not real good at the shortcuts that uses, so we'll have to work on that.
I've got a list of them.
Okay, good, good. You probably can, the same ones that I'm going to show in Windows, you can probably do in Mac. Okay. So yeah, you've got it. So yours is based on the Chrome operating system. It doesn't have that, and it doesn't have, what else doesn't it have? You do have the control key.
Yeah. Yeah, I just got it for Christmas. I'm learning how to use it.
Yeah, let's see how, oh yeah, it's nice and light.
Uh-huh.
It's very easy. The thing about a Chromebook is you have to have Wi-Fi in your house.
Yeah.
A Chromebook likes to be connected to the internet all the time. So do all computers, but a Chromebook you basically have to.
Oh.
That's new. Well, I better check on it too, because I've had actually got my Chromebook from my mother-in-law. She didn't like it. It was too big and heavy for her. You want it? I never say no to something's free. And I like it. I don't carry it around much. It always stays in the, we have a diner booth in our house, and it just stays right there. I read the newspaper while I have breakfast. So if you don't carry it around, it's great, but it's so simple to use. All right, so now let's go into the computer here. Let me get this out of the way. Can everybody see one of the two screens there? They're identical displays. Okay, great. So this is a Windows 10 laptop. Let's take a look around here. This is actually called the lock screen. These over here, we have library guest, B5, admin, David Baker, IT coordinator, and other user. These are called accounts, user accounts. And what Microsoft came up with, let's say a family of 4 wants to buy a computer, but everybody wants to use it. Each person can put their own account on the computer. Then they log in as themselves, and that screen that comes up is all the stuff that's theirs on that computer. It's a very clever way to have people share a computer. All right? Now I think if I had a family of 4, I'd just buy 4 Chromebooks because they're so cheap. And everybody could have their own computer, which is even better. Because if you have 2 users and they want to use it at the same time, that doesn't solve that problem. Anyway, the account that we're going to log in is library guest. Normally, oh, by the way, can everybody see the pointer moving around here? And everybody understands that I'm moving that with my finger. I had a patron the other day. I was doing this, and she didn't realize the connection. She saw my finger moving, but she didn't see this moving around, and I didn't realize somebody didn't know that. Nothing against her. Why should she know that? But that is just so endemic on how you use a computer nowadays. I didn't even think to explain that. And then once I showed her, oh, now I see what you're doing. Okay? So I don't have to put in a password here, because when we established the account, this account for library guests, anybody can borrow this computer. We didn't bother to put in a password. You just have to click this little arrow, and it logs in. And I'm going to close this browser now, because we're going to get into that. Oh, I'll show you again. A keyboard shortcut to lock the computer is Windows key and then L. All right, I'm going to click on this screen, and then it's going to offer me library guest, and I clicked, see the little arrow I'm hovering over? I click that once by pressing the touchpad on this laptop, or I could click the mouse button, and oh, maybe this isn't, there it goes. Now it's logged in as library guest. This just happens to be the background of this screen, and you can change that if you want. So let's take a look around here. This is the desktop of Windows 10. This is also called a graphical user interface. And believe it or not, the graphical user interface was invented by Xerox Corporation. Yeah, the Xerox Corporation that makes copiers. They made so much money back when they had a monopoly, or a near monopoly making copiers, that they founded a research facility on the West Coast. And I'm guessing it was on the West Coast, so it'd be near Stanford, where they could get a lot of computer people. And they invented this graphical user interface. And one day they showed it to Steve Jobs, and the rest is history. He took it and put it in the Macintosh, and I bought one of those brand new Macintoshes. And then everybody liked it so much, Bill Gates said, I got to do it too. And then Windows came out. All right. So on this, well, let me show you something here that's interesting. This is what computers looked like before they had a graphical user interface. It looked like, let me open this window up. It looked like that. That's what you got when you started up a computer in the early 90s. You had to know all the commands up here to open different applications or whatever you wanted to do. And if you put the wrong command in, it doesn't correct you. It just goes, here, I'll do something here. Hopefully that's not a real command. BBB is not recognized as internal or external command. Operable program or batch file. That's it. No help, no nothing. You've got to know what you're doing. So this is what the disk operating system looked like. And most computers had this in the early days. I did this. Today, they still have disk DOS in some, or not really DOS, but this is called a command line interface. And this is how you program a server or a network switch or something like that. Pros still like to use this. They don't like a graphical interface. It slows them down. But this is what the computing world looked like until this was invented.
And that's the same way as Linux is.
Linux, I think, can be graphical too. But yeah, you can operate that. In fact, most servers use Linux.
Oh, yeah.
And they use they'll do that command line interface. Once you learn it, it's good, but until then, it's tough. This is obviously much better. Computers would have never been as popular as they are without this. So where I'm moving this little arrow around now is the desktop background. Over here to the left, these are called icons. They represent programs. If I want to start the program that's in here, all I have to do is double-click on it. We'll pick Zoom. I'll double-click on it. There'll be a pause while what's happening now? Zoom is being moved from the hard drive to the RAM so that the computer can use it. That's what we're waiting for now. So now you know what you've been waiting for all these years when you have to wait. And here it goes. Now the program is started. I don't want to do any of this stuff, so I'm just going to close it out. How do I close a program? Kind of tough to see on this white background, but there's a little X here. If I hover over it, and by hovering over it, I mean put the X on top of it. Don't do anything else. You see it turns red so that you can see it. And what does it say? It even tells you what it says, what it means. It means close. Do I want to close it? Yes. So I just tap. Zoom is gone. Now, some people like to store everything on their desktop. When they open up their computer, this is covered with icons. That's not necessary anymore, and I'll show you why. In fact, there's even a reason you shouldn't do that. When you start up your computer, none of these icons are on your desktop background. None of them. Your computer has to draw them every time you start up. So if you imagine if you had this desktop covered with icons, it would take quite a while for the computer to draw those every single time you restarted your computer. So it's best to have the minimum. Now I'm guilty. I put icons on my desktop too, but not very many. Okay, so let's continue our tour. We've seen the desktop background. We've seen the icons that are on the desktop. And now we have what looks like what the Windows key did, called the Start button. If I highlight that without touching it, it just labels it for me, which is nice if I didn't know what that was. If I tap it once, watch what happens. These are all the programs installed on my hard drive. And by the way, I should clarify the word programs anymore, because a lot of times they use the word app now, which stands for application. When the iPhone got really popular and they came out with the, what do you call it, the App Store, you know, the commercials, there's an app for that. They started calling programs apps. And now basically the word program is gone and everybody calls them apps. This is a list of all the, I'll do it, apps on this computer. Let me show you a little shortcut here. This only works for Windows. I don't think Mac has a thing. So let's go to the top of this list. And so it's alphabetical. We see the first one is Access. What if I want to open Word? I don't want to scroll all the way to W. That's at the end of the alphabet. Watch what you can do. I'll go to the first letter, which is B. I'll tap on that. Now there's a little shortcut thing here. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. If I touch the W, I scroll all the way to the W's automatically. I just found that out about 3 months ago, and now I do it all the time. So that's a little shortcut. Just go to any letter, tap on it, and you'll get a little grid that will slide you up and down those list of programs to that letter that you tap on. Okay? So those are the list of programs. I'm going to tap on the Start button again. We have some stuff here on the left. The first thing, which I could put my picture in it, well, it wouldn't be my picture since it's library guest. That just represents, that little person represents the account you're logged in as, which in this case is library guest. If you're not sure, you hover over it and it says library guest. Okay, so now we know what account we're logged in as. This is a shortcut to documents. This is a shortcut to pictures, and I'll show you where these shortcuts lead later on. This is a very important one. It looks like a gear. In any kind of computer, any kind of program, as far as I know, I've not seen a single exception. When you see a gear, that's settings. Okay? If I tap on that, I go into the Settings app. It has all kinds of settings. Zillions of settings. We're going to go over some of them today, but not all of them. I want to close out of here. How do I do it? I go to the top right. There's a little X. Hover over it. It turns red. It says X. And you don't have to wait for all that once you learn how to do this. You'll just hit the X and that program is gone. So I hit the Start button. I look for the gear. It'll be at the bottom left, except power's underneath it. So it's not at the very bottom. I just tap on Settings, and the Settings app comes up. These are all the settings on the computer. I'm about to show you a much better way to find a setting. This is the hardest way you can because each one of these has many, many things inside of it. But while I'm here, let's see if I can do this. I want to go into System. So remember, we're in Settings, and I told you your computer will tell you what kind of processor you have. So in the Settings, I'm going to come all the way to the left. I'm going to click on About. All right. Device specification. Your device name is Wolfeboro Library.conferenceroom or dash conference room dash 02. That's what that means. You can name your computer anything you want. If you don't name your computer, Microsoft will name it for you in an acronym that's not very friendly, like I usually name my computer Mike's computer or whatever. And sometimes someone will need that computer. If someone wants to remote into this computer, connect into this computer from across the internet, maybe I'm going to get help with a problem and the person helping me is in Michigan. They might ask me, what's the name of your computer? And you want to give it to them exactly like it says, WLIB and so forth. They put that in there and they'll find your computer. So that's what a computer name is. Processor. Okay, so we call that CPU. This is an Intel i5 CPU, and then it says 2.5 big G, and it doesn't say B or little b, it says HZ. HZ stands for Hertz, which is the new abbreviation for frequency. Frequency is when something vibrates up and down, that's the frequency. In this case, it means how many cycles per second your processor operates at. So what this means is 2.5 billion hertz. This processor can do 2.5 billion computing steps in 1 second. And you really need that because just when you type an A on your keyboard and an A appears on the video screen, that probably takes 30 steps. So if that operated at human speed, it'd be so slow, you go, I can't use this thing. I go get coffee between the time I hit A and it appears on the screen. But when something happens at 2.5 billion times, I guess I'm too loud here, 2.5 billion times a second, it can do a lot of 30-step items. Okay? Next thing, we know what this is now, installed RAM, 8 gigabytes. And for those of you using Windows, Microsoft says you need at least 4 gigabytes to run Windows. And that's the absolute minimum. Really, you need 8. If you have 8, it'll run just fine. If you have more, it'll run even better. Device ID, we're not really concerned about. Product ID, unless we were talking to the manufacturer, they might want us to look in here and get this information. Look at this. Now you know what this means. System type, 64-bit operating system. x64 base processor, which means the same thing. This is a 64. Is 64 a multiple of 8? Okay. Yep. So you're not going to see a 70-bit computer. You're going to see a 64. Frankly, you're going to see a 32 if it's really old, or 64. And apparently they're really happy with 64 because 64 has been out a long time and they haven't come up with what would the next step be? A 72, right? 9 times 8. Windows specification. You have Windows 10 Pro. There's 2 flavors of Windows 10. There's Windows 10 Home and Windows 10 Pro. Pro is a little better and a little more expensive. The version is 21H2. It's been updated to that version. I'll talk about that later. And the OS build, I'll talk about that later. So this is some really good information. Where did we get this? I went to Settings, System. I went all the way to the bottom on the left here and I hit About. Now I know quite a bit about my computer. And I do this a lot when somebody gives me a laptop in the IT office there and I ask, what is this? I have no idea. It's a computer. Okay, thank you. And kind of right away I can see it's Windows. And I'll go right in here and read all this. I know how much RAM you have. I know what processor you have. I know how fast it is. I know the name of the computer. I get a lot of information that I need. This is a really good place to get it. Okay, we're done with that. I want to close this window. So I'm going to look for the X at the top right-hand corner, and I'm going to close it. Actually, this would be a good time to show you one other thing, too.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
When you want to name your computer, you
Not exactly. Do you see right here where it says rename this PC?
oh, I see, okay.
You click on that, and well, it's going to make me log in as in a different account that's allowed to make changes here, so I can't do it from this account. And that's something I didn't mention. I don't want to tell you everything at once, but some of the users on this computer are sort of junior members. They can't make a lot of changes to the computer, i.e. your kids. You wouldn't want your kids to be able to log in and make all kinds of changes. For instance, you wouldn't want them to rename the computer. Then when you use the computer, daddy or mommy who's a business person, and then somebody in California says, what's the name of your computer? And you tell them what it used to be, and you don't know that your kid changed it that morning, right? So there's 2 types of user accounts. There's an administrator account, and there's a local account. You have to be an administrator account to make changes on the computer. Okay, this is what I'm going to show. I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but we've got a window open. This is a window that we're looking at, okay? There's a couple more controls over here. If I tap on this, looks like 2 overlapping windows, and do that, it gets smaller. See that? It doesn't fill up the whole screen. Why would you want to do that? What if you have another window open? You could have the other window open over here. Also, this window can be resized. If I watch this pointer that I'm moving with my finger, if I move it to the very edge and it turns into a double-headed, you've got to hold it in just the right place, tap on it, and I can change the size of the screen to whatever I want. Same thing on the bottom. It's a little tricky. Tap on it and then move it. What about if I want to keep this window open, but I want to get it off the screen for now? I don't want to close it, because over here I closed it. That's what this horizontal line does. If I do this, it's gone. But look down here. I'm getting a little bit ahead here, but this is called the taskbar. This is the settings. Remember the gear? Notice it's got a little white line underneath it. That means it's open in the background. It's open in RAM. To get that back, all I have to do is tap on that, and it's back. So let's say you were working in another program. Now, what was my processor? So let's say, so you got the other window open, and it asks you, you want to download some software. You want to download Adobe, which is really good for reading text files. And Adobe says, is this a 64-bit computer or a 32-bit? Oh, I can't remember, but I know I got the system thing open. Let me open that back up. Get the information, and let's see, this is a 64-bit. Okay, thank you. Now I don't need you anymore, but I might need you in the future, so instead of hitting close, I'm going to hit minimize, is what it's called, the little horizontal line, and it's gone. Yeah, by the way, I should say that if you're new, every Tuesday we have what's called Tech Tuesday. You call in advance, make an appointment, because I have people showing up 2 or 3 together, and sometimes it takes me an hour to fix a problem on somebody's computer, and those 2 people have to wait the whole time. We used to do half-hour appointments. We found out that wasn't enough, so now everybody gets a whole hour. We sit in my office, and I can usually fix whatever's wrong with your computer or your phone. All righty, so I think we're done with this. I'm going to close this by hitting the close X and tap on it. And let's continue our tour. 1 button more to go on the start, which is the left side, so I'm going to hit start. And we have what looks like a power button. And if I hover over it, it says power. Watch what happens when I click on that, because the power button on a computer is a little different than any other device. By the way, if you have a laptop or if you have a desktop, you also have a physical power button. Okay? You usually don't shut your computer off with that. There's one time when you have to use that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Usually you use this little software power. Notice there's 3 things that popped up here. We can put the computer to sleep, and it even tells you what you're doing. It has a little pop-up, if I can get it to come back, and tells you what you're doing. The computer's powered down but not off. Shutdown will run what's called an algorithm, a set of software steps to make sure it's safe to shut off your computer. And by the way, usually if there's anything open on the computer, it'll tell you, you left this open. Do you want to leave it open, or do you want to close it, like we just closed the settings screen? And then it will shut completely off. And then you can do a restart. What does restart mean? It means you completely clear the RAM memory, turn the computer off, and immediately turn it back on. And I'll tell you this from working on computers here. If your computer is doing something strange, and you can't figure out what it is, a lot of times restarting the computer fixes it. And you'll never even know what was wrong, and it won't come back. Why is that? My guess would be that when the hard drive was writing to RAM back and forth, one of those 1s and 0s that, let's say it was supposed to be a 1, it changed to a 0 for some reason. And that screwed up everything. The computer just doesn't work right. That's a serious problem. You'll never find that. But you can fix it by going to restart. Memory will be dumped out of RAM, back into here. It will reload everything, and then it'll probably work. That'll probably fix maybe 80% of your problems. Just restarting.
Viruses too?
No, viruses will probably have to be removed, but it'll fix a lot of things. Windows is a very, very complicated program. It's got when we do File Explorer, if I remember, I'll show you the Windows files. There's over 400 of them that all have to work together, and they don't always work together right. Even Microsoft will tell you that. Restart the computer. Now, I said that don't use the power button except for one time. Every once in a while, your computer completely freezes. You can't do anything. I'm not talking about a program freezing. I'm saying nothing happens. Nothing. There might be you might have a letter open that you're typing, and the letter's still there, but the keyboard doesn't work. Can't do anything. In that case, the only thing, you can't get to this. You can't shut the computer off or restart the computer by coming to power, because when you move the mouse, the little pointer doesn't move. Nothing works. In that case, the only thing you can do, you could unplug it, and you could take the battery out, but it would be the same thing as what I'm about to tell you. Put your finger on the power button and hold it for about 4 seconds. That will force the computer to shut down. Same thing as applying shutdown. Of course, it doesn't do its safety algorithm. It just goes out. But that's all you can do. And then, 1 second. If you're really lucky, wait a few seconds and hit the power switch again and let it come back on, which is called rebooting, by the way. And rebooting means that the operating system is loaded from the hard drive into RAM, and maybe the computer will be fixed. If you do that 3 times, let's say I'm going to get to you. If you do that again and it's still frozen, because it will go blank, believe me, when you hold that power button down. But it starts up and it's still frozen. Do it again. Still frozen. Do it one more time. If you do it 3 times, and I don't know why anybody would do that unless they know what I'm about to tell you. I think it's a little stupid, but this is the way it works. If you do it 3 times, that triggers the computer to automatically do a diagnostic and try and fix itself. And that's something you can do without being a computer tech. 3 times. And I've said most people would do it twice. And what does Einstein say? The definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. But you do it a 3rd time, you will get a different result. And they do that for you. They don't do that for computer techs. They do that I'm frustrated at home. I don't have anybody to call. I don't know much about this computer. Try it 3 times. And you're probably not going to do that unless I told you. Okay, your question. Yeah, so he brought up a really good point that I haven't talked about yet, that when let's say you open Microsoft Word, which turns your computer into a fancy typewriter, a very fancy typewriter. You're typing a long letter. That letter is being stored in RAM. So let's say the letter is 5 pages long and you've been typing all morning and your power fails. And you're on a desktop, so the computer goes completely dead. How long did RAM last without power? Does anybody remember? 3 thousandths of a second. In engineering, they call it 3 milliseconds. And your letter is gone. So how do you prevent that from happening? You type 1 page and you hit save. And I'm going to show you how to do that. That moves the 1 page that you've done so far into your hard drive. How long does a hard drive last? Years. Years and years. Okay? Now, what he's talking about is some programs, and Microsoft Word, I believe, is one of them, that has an auto-save. It saves every few seconds so that doesn't happen. Most programs don't do that. They leave it up to you. So that's an important concept that even a beginner has to understand. When you're working on your computer and the power fails, if it's a laptop, you're okay because this one actually isn't plugged in. This is running on battery power. And but let's say this was plugged in and the power failed, it would automatically switch to battery and I'd be fine. I wouldn't lose anything. So I wouldn't worry about that. But on my desktop, I would. When the power even blips out, if it blips out for more than 3 1,000ths of a second, 3 milliseconds, your letter's gone. If you save periodically while you're working on this big long document to your hard drive, you're good to go. Okay? So that's enough about the power switch, I guess. Continuing our tour. I'm going to have to keep an eye on this battery power. I may have to go get the charger here. All right, so we're down at the bottom. This area is basically generally called the taskbar along the very bottom. As a setting, you can move it somewhere else. By the way, on any Microsoft product, you can change anything. It's just very, very many options on everything. Kind of annoying, actually. It takes a long time to learn them all. You probably never will learn them all. But anyway, let's go down to the taskbar. The very next thing, see where it says type here to search? That is called the quick search bar. It is going to be one of your best friends if you have a Windows 10 or Windows 11 computer. Not only does that search your computer, if the answer is not on your computer, it searches on the internet for you if you're connected to the internet. And a Microsoft computer is intended to be online all the time. Doesn't have to be, but that's kind of the intention. So I showed you that there were settings, and I said there's an easier way to get there. You could look through settings, and by the way, there's 2 different areas that the settings in your computer are on. One of them is the settings app, which you already saw when we did the system. The other one is an area called the control panel. And Microsoft likes to move various settings from one to the other. Even when you know where a setting is, it might not be there anymore. So what I always do is I come down here to the search bar. Let's say I want to see what my mouse settings are. Mouse, oh, look at that. I didn't even have to type anymore. I'd already figured out. Change the mouse pointer display or mouse settings. All right. And notice at the bottom here, it has search the web for the answer. Okay, so these are all on my computer, and this is on the web. So let's go change your mouse settings. And this looks like it is inside the settings app, but I didn't have to go there and hunt around. I just went to the quick search bar, typed what I wanted. You don't have to type it perfectly. It'll correct your spelling, and it knows what you're thinking usually. You don't even do it accurately, and it comes up with the appropriate response and puts you right in the right place. So everybody, now this is a beginner's class. Does everybody know what a mouse is? Okay. Well, you never know. All right. That was invented by Douglas Engelbart, by the way, in the late 60s, I think. And it rolls along, has a little optical sensor down there. This one doesn't seem to, there it goes. And there's two buttons. There's a left button and a right button. Pressing on the left button is called a left click, or sometimes you just call that the click because that's the way you normally do it. And you can also do a right click. And I'll show you what happens when we do a right click. I'm going to hover, I'm going to close this setting. So I just want to show you how to use the quick search bar. Remember we talked about the start button. If you do a click or a left click, you get exactly what we had before. All these buttons on the left side, and also an alphabetical list of all of your programs. And if you don't want to scroll down through the list because you're looking for W, you hit, just to reiterate here, you hit a C, you get your little shortcut, hit the W, and you're in the W's. But you can also hover over the start button and do a right click. I'm clicking to the right here with my right finger. Watch what happens. That's a different list. Now, to be honest with you, this is kind of an advanced feature thing here. You're probably not going to use this much until you learn a little bit more about computers. But when you do, there's a lot of good stuff here. You've got, let's see, Event Viewer is very good if you've got something wrong with your computer, but it takes quite a bit of expertise to read it. You've got System, you've got Device Manager, which is useful if you've got a problem with your computer. Task Manager, which this gentleman mentioned. I'll show you what happens if we pull that up because you might need it. You can also get into settings. File Explorer you will need, but File Explorer is built into the taskbar here, and this is the easiest way to open it. But let's go into Task Manager for just a second. It's going to look like something that's very detailed that you're not going to want, but there's one feature in there that you might need. So I'm going to open Task Manager by clicking on it. And by the way, I right-click to open that up, but when I wanted to open up that list in the Start button, but when I wanted to start Task Manager, I left-click. I just did that without telling you. All right, I think this window looks a little small, so I want to increase the size. I'm going to take this box right here and click on it. And there we go. Now I can see it, okay? This is called Task Manager. It gives you all kinds of information. One of the things it tells a person, now a lot of this stuff is very detailed, but here's something that's really useful for any user right along the top here. CPU 4%. That tells us that the CPU in this device is only working at 4, it's moving a little bit because this is live time. It's moving a little bit. It's only working at 1% of its capacity. That's good. When that's pegged at 100%, something's wrong. It should not do that. A lot of time that indicates you have a virus, and that virus is screwing with the CPU and making it run, and that's going to affect the operation of your computer. If my computer is frozen or acting very, very slow, I'll open Task Manager and I'll look at all these numbers. Memory, I'm using 34%, and they're talking about RAM. When they say memory, they mean RAM. When they say storage, they mean hard drive. Okay? That's good, only 34%. You don't want to use 100% of your memory. The computer has a way of working when it's doing that, but it slows down. My disk is sitting here not doing anything. It's not storing, and it's not being read. That's okay. Network is not doing anything because I'm not pulling up any web pages. Power usage doesn't do a percent, it just does it on every application here. So you want to look at these 4 numbers basically. You don't see anything pegged down to 100%. If you do, you might have a problem. But real reason I wanted to show you this is if you have, let's say you're typing a letter in Microsoft Word again, and I should start Word here. I'm going to start Word. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit by just double-clicking on the Word icon on the taskbar. And Word is going to start. And why don't I see it in here? It should be listed to the left here. Oh, I'm going to minimize this and make sure Word started. Yep, Word started. So let me show you another way to open the taskbar. You can right-click with the right button in a blank area of the taskbar, and it's right here on this list. Hit Task Manager, and this is the same thing we had open before. I was hoping to see, Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, here it is. So let's say Microsoft Office is frozen. Not the whole computer. That was the situation I gave you when you used the power button to shut it down. But if only Microsoft Word is acting up. It probably has a little spinning thing that says I'm not responding. You give it a few minutes, and you don't want to close it if you don't have to, but it's not working right. You can open up Task Manager, find Microsoft Word, which will be usually towards the top. I'm surprised it's this far down. Highlight it. See how it, and by highlighting, I mean you click on it once and it turns blue. And then, over here to the bottom right, it says End Task. So when I do that, whatever I highlighted is going to quit. Let me make sure it's still have Microsoft Word is highlighted. It's spinning. It's frozen. I've got to stop it and restart it again. You hit, and I can't do that because the screen is frozen in Microsoft Word, so I'm doing this. You hit End Task. And Microsoft Word is, let's put the minimized, see we can, it's gone. That's how you stop it. So Task Manager is really for an IT professional, or at least somebody that knows a lot about computers, but there's a couple times when you might want to look at it. And again, I'll go over that. The first time we did it from the Start button, but most people do it this way. They go to a blank part of the taskbar, right-click with their mouse, come up here and hit Task Manager. And 2 reasons you might look at that. Actually, I can think of 3 that a user might want to. I just hit the expand the screen. If your computer's acting up, you might want to make sure none of these say 100%. So a couple reasons why you might go into Task Manager if something is frozen. You highlight it and then hit End Task down here. That's perfectly fine to do. You're not going to break anything. And then what I would do is just start Microsoft Word again. Just because something is screwed up like that doesn't mean I've got a problem with my computer. Again, Windows has like 500 little programs all working together, and sometimes they don't. Restart it, give it a chance to try it again. All right, so that's one reason, is to stop a program. Other reason is to make sure these numbers are below 100%. Because if they're pegged at 100%, if your computer is working but it's very, very slow. I mean, sometimes you type an A and nothing happens, then 30 seconds later the A appears. That's not right. Even though there were 30 steps, it should have done them at the blink of an eye. So I'll look on here. Why is something pegged at 100%? Something's wrong. The third reason I haven't told you about yet, see these little tabs up here? The one that says Startup. Hit Startup. If your computer takes a long time to start, and by that I mean when it's loading Windows and it's making all kinds of noises and the screen is changing, that's called booting up. Sometimes that takes an inordinate amount of time. Come in here to the Task Manager, hit the Startup tab, and look at all these programs start up automatically every time you start Windows, even if you don't want them to. Look at Skype. Skype is notorious for loading itself into this auto start area. Do you use Skype every time you start your computer? The answer is probably no. So what you can do is you come here, see where it says Enabled? I'm going to click on that, and down here it changes to Enable. Now I can enable it, And because I already had this disabled, sorry I'm confusing you, I already turned this off, but let's say I found it enabled. That means Skype is going to start every time. That's the way it was before I changed it in this computer. I don't want that. That's going to slow my startup time. So you find Skype and you click on enabled, and then down here it says disable. Hit disable, guess what? Skype got disabled. Windows even tells you what is the startup impact if I leave this program starting. And where everything, let's see, let me put Skype back and see if I see what theirs is. It's probably high. None, that's not right. Oh, there's one that says high right there. Microsoft Office document is enabled right now, and the startup impact is high. That means it's taking quite a bit of time to start just because you have that enabled. So I'm going to disable that. I'm going to click on it. Then I'm going to come down here and say disabled. And now it's disabled. So what in the cloud means in general, it's a really cool term. It means it's on a server somewhere in somebody's warehouse or server warehouse. What's a server? A server is a computer that stores information. And it's owned by somebody else. The OneDrive server would be owned by Microsoft. It comes for free with a Microsoft, when you buy Microsoft Windows. And OneDrive can be set up so every time you save something on a computer, it's also saved in OneDrive, which means it's on Microsoft's server somewhere out in the world. So in other words, it's backed up. Also, if you use another computer, let's say you go visit your sister out in Seattle and you didn't bring your laptop with you and you need something in OneDrive, you can log into your OneDrive on her computer and all your files will be there and you can work with them. But it's not real simple to set up and use. What I meant by external drive, because it made it sound like drives are always inside the computer, but they're not. You can get what's called an external drive that looks like this, except it's got an enclosure around it. And it just looks like a whatever color box connects into the USB port over here, one of the ports on your computer. And that's another storage device. The external hard drives, probably the easiest place to get it is Amazon. And you want to go into the search bar there and just say external hard drives. And also what I would do before you buy anything on Amazon, because it's kind of a technical subject and there's some decisions you have to make on the size and how they connect to your computer. What I always do when I buy something new is here, I'll show you. I'll show you exactly what you should do. I open up any browser, and I'm doing that by tapping the little edge symbol down there in the taskbar. And this is called the address bar. Guys see where I'm hovering here? That used to be where you put the address of a website that you want to look up. The address, the formal name is URL, Uniform Resource Locator. It used to be that's what you put into the address bar. This is the address for Bing, which is a search engine, www.bing.com. It used to be you had to put in the URL, the address of whatever you were looking for, in the correct format, or it would reject it, just like DOS did that I showed you. But the address bar has also become just like the search bar down here. You can type in anything, and it will think about what you mean and correct it and give you an answer. So let me see. I want to buy an external hard drive. I've never bought one. How do I buy an external hard drive? Now that is not an address. It's a question, just like this is a person. But watch what happens. I'm going to hit the Enter key. Actually, that's a key I forgot to go over in the key because this is not on a typewriter. We have an Enter key, and I'm about to press it. Should be on your middle right side. Watch what happens. 7. Now, you got to be careful. This is a commercial search engine, so the first thing it does is give you people that paid ads. That's not necessarily bad, but they're going to eventually end up selling you something that they have. Okay, the first one is from Staples. Second one is from Digital Trends, whoever that is. Actually, that is not an ad, so that's a go-to. I'm going to click on that. It's loading that web page. Will be when I click on it, right? How to choose an external hard drive. I'm going to take 10 minutes to read that, and I'm going to know more about that way more about that than I knew before. Almost like an expert who'd sat down and helped you. So before you go on a website and just guess at what you're buying, I think I'll get a 500 gigabyte external hard drive. That sounds good. Don't do that. And don't do anything like that. Read an article about how do I buy that. Watch out for this, watch out for that, do this. And then some of the websites will have, these are the best 10 hard drives to buy. And you click on all of those and look at it. So more importantly than talking about how to do a hard drive, I just showed you one of the ways you can look up any subject. Remember I told somebody here, this young lady I think, that I'm going to go over a lot of subject today and just give an overview, and you're not going to walk out, okay, I got all that stuff. But write down the topics that I'm talking about, and if you want some more information about it, like here's an example. How do I use my mouse settings? And I'm going to add Windows 10 because I don't care about a Chrome thing, although you do, but maybe somebody, or a Mac. How do I do it? And then put the operating system and hit enter. And there's all kinds of articles. And this is just the first page. I'm going to do what's called scrolling. See this little gray bar here? Drag this down, and I can go to the bottom. And if they've got related searches. And what I want to do is get to the very bottom here and probably find out there's 50 pages to go here. Oh, it just keeps going. Okay, well, more than you want to read. You can do that with anything. So all the things I already talked about, how to buy a hard drive, how does RAM work, what's the binary number system, anything you have a question on, how to use Task Manager, read all about it by just going into your what's supposed to be an address bar, which has also become a search bar. I forget when I found that out because I didn't know that, and it changed my life. I mean, I do that all the time. That's how I fix all the stuff in the library if I don't know how to do it. Who am I going to ask?
You think
That it goes to either Google or Bing, depending on what search. I didn't explain this. When you type something in there, it's actually connected to a search bar, to a search engine. And so it does go to Google. I didn't know I told you that, but it doesn't really matter, but that's how it works. Now, that brings up a good point, though. Is everything that in all these, however many pages are going to be on mouse settings, is everything in there absolutely true? Who knows? There's nobody in charge of the internet to say, hey, you can't put that on there. That's not how that works. Yeah, I tell you the truth, I very rarely find anything really wrong. While we're doing that, while we're covering this sort of topic, how do I find something here? I'm going to show you how to go on YouTube and find something. So, oh, did you see what I did there? Let's see. Oh, it's too late now. I clicked on that so I could type something else in here. And you think I'd have to do delete and get rid of this, but I don't. I can type right on top of it. I'm just going to type YouTube. I don't have to spell it right, but it corrected it. Then I'm going to hit enter. And it didn't go right into YouTube, but it's got the address right here. Is everybody familiar with YouTube? Okay. No? Okay. YouTube is a collection on videos on every subject in the galaxy. All right? So I'm going to go to YouTube. Now it's going to pull up a bunch of videos that it thinks I might want to watch. I'm just going to ignore that. But see the search here? Sometimes you have to click on this little magnifying glass to get the search to come up. You do the same thing in here that you did in the URL, the address bar, except now we're in Google. Talk to it like it's a person. Mouse settings. Oops. And again, you don't have to spell it. Oh, look at that. It took a guess. Mouse settings, Windows 10. That's exactly what I want to see videos about. And there they are. How to adjust mouse sensitivity. How to change your mouse cursor on Windows 10. If you have vision problems, you might want to make the mouse cursor, which is this little thing here, this thing, a little bigger. All kinds of things. Windows 10, mouse, all settings. Now, not every video is perfect. A lot of them are a guy from like a country like Pakistan or India where it's kind of hard to understand them. But most, and not that there's anything wrong, it's not his fault. It doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's talking about, but it's kind of hard to understand. Every once in a while you get a video by a guy that didn't do any prep, just started talking with a camera pointed at him, and he'll say, I think this is how this works. And you think, why didn't you make sure before you turn the camera on? But most of them are very well done, and a lot of them are very professional, very professional. This is a good way to solve not only any computer problem, but any problem. I've fixed running toilets this way. I have a Kohler toilet constantly running. I'll click that on and I'll say, this is the part you need to tune. I'm Joe the plumber. A professional plumber takes the time to make a video for free. Guy won't even answer the phone to come out to your house, but he's making a video. This is what you need to do. He's got somebody holding the camera over it. Take a standard screwdriver, just this, right to there, and it'll stop running. You know how much money that guy just saved me? Now, is he absolutely right every time? No. But you know what? If you're not sure, watch another video. The other guy or girl says, same thing, that's what you do. Hey, I bet that's how to fix it. I'll give it a try. I do it constantly. Here's the biggest thing about how to prevent a virus, because we get training on that from a security firm. The biggest risk is not YouTube or Googling something. The biggest risk on a virus is email. And specifically clicking on something in email. Don't click on anything unless you know. For instance, if you let's say you can't log into a website and it says, have you forgotten your password? Click here. Everybody's done that, right? No? You've never forgotten a password? Oh, what's the secret? That's not good either. I knew you were going to say that. And I meant to talk about passwords. I don't know if I'll get to it today. But all right, let me say I've done it. I've forgotten my password. So I click on Forgot Password, and it sends an email to me, because it'll ask you what's your email address. And it says, click on this link to reset your password. You can do that. Okay? If it came right after you requested it, what are the odds that that's a virus coming in at the same time? No. But anything else, don't click on it. If you get Amazon's not really bad, but people imitate Amazon very, very well. I don't have anything with the Amazon logo, the smile thing. They'll send you an email. It says Amazon. It has the smile. It's well written. It looks like it comes from Amazon.com. And it says, your account has been compromised. Please click on this link and we're trying to help you. Somebody just bought a $2,000 computer on your account. We need to help you. Click on this. Maybe that's true, but before I would do that, I would contact Amazon, completely independent of this email. Because I had that happen in the library. I got a letter from, email from MetroCast and said this account, something was wrong with this account. You need to click on here and deal with this. I stopped right there. And by the way, it doesn't seem to do any harm to open the email. It's clicking on things in the email that'll kill you, okay? I called MetroCast. Is this true? And whatever the problem was, is this true this is going on? She said, no, it's not true. We didn't send that. She goes, give me the details on that because we want to look into that. But I didn't click on it. And I've gotten these from Amazon. Also, you get phone calls basically saying the same thing. And they really look good. You know, it used to be they would use bad English. They would spell Amazon. You could tell, right? It was from Nigeria or something. But now they're getting very, very good. And I just found this out a couple of months ago. It can say www.amazon.com, which is Amazon's URL. But they can use the A can be from a different alphabet that just happens to look like whatever our alphabet is. I'll call it an American A. And they can register that URL and make it official. It does say Amazon, but you don't know that A is a little bit different than all the other letters in there. That's really tricky. So you never know anymore. If you get something from anybody, call on the phone and say, is this real? With the one exception that I just said, if you just started it and then all of a sudden you get an email with a click link that's helping you, I would click on that. And that's basically the training we get from the town, because some municipalities have started a virus where they lock all the information of the town. They go, you got to give us $10 million or you can't get your license plate database. What are they going to do? They got to pay. So in order to stop that, every town employee has to take a training course. And I just boiled that whole course down to you, is be careful what you click on. Oh, so kind of ahead to the end of the class on how to look up anything. Either go in any web browser. This is Edge. This is what Edge looks like down here. If you can see my little thing, it looks like a swirly thing. And a lot of people have the Chrome web browser, especially on a Chromebook. I bet you have that. That looks like the little beach ball with the different colors. Either one are excellent browsers. They kind of work the same way. Go into the search bar, which is also, if you want to think of it, I'll rename it as a query bar. Type in here. Now watch how I can change what's written in here. I just tap on it once. It all turns blue. I could just type right over that, or I could hit the delete key and it's gone. And just type on it like you're talking to me. How do I do this? And if it's a question about a computer, it really helps to put the operating system in there, because if you're working on a Mac, it might give you a Windows answer and it won't work. Other way is you can put the YouTube app on your as an icon on your computer, or you can just type YouTube, hit enter, and now you'll be in the YouTube world like we are right now. And in this search bar right here, do the same thing, ask it a question. And that way you get a video. A lot of times when you're on a web browser, you get just a text answer, but sometimes they link it to YouTube and you get a video anyway. And it's amazing how well a lot of those videos, and there's people that make their living. When you watch YouTube, you usually have to watch a few seconds of ads. And then you can say, all right, stop the ads and go into them. You only have to watch a few seconds. But people get paid for that. So they, like these plumbers, they probably do that so that they can sell the ads. And I don't know how that works. I have no idea. But you can actually make a living at that. You could make $100,000 a year from YouTube, from making videos. And you don't have to have YouTube.
Oh, to even go this far.
I don't have YouTube. What I did is I opened a browser and I typed YouTube in the URL, the search address, and I hit enter and it just went in. Now, you see where it says on the upper right you can sign in? You see that?
Oh, yeah.
Now notice I didn't sign in, I just started using it. It didn't say what's your username and what's your password, let me see if you paid and all that kind of thing. No, and I didn't make that clear. It didn't say that. All you signing in, and I do have a YouTube account, YouTube will get to know you. Like if you use it to fix a toilet, the next time you log in, if you log in as yourself, it'll pull up some YouTube on toilets. Think, oh, you're a toilet guy. No, I fixed that. I don't care about that anymore. But the kind of guy I am, when I log into my YouTube, I used to be a pilot. I'm a retired pilot. It would have a bunch of aviation videos. It will have a bunch of computer videos. It'll have a bunch of old radio video. The things I like, it puts out for me. And I also can do what's called a subscription, where people have channels where they do videos all the time under their name. Right, and then it'll have, if I have a channel on there, it will come up. So there is an advantage to getting an account, which is absolutely free, but you don't have to. If you're only going to do it to solve your problems, you probably don't need it. Who's paying for all this? Apparently, they say, you still have to watch the ads even if you're not a member. So I guess that's how they pay for it. They sell enough. They probably make a half a cent when that ad is on there. But thousands of people watch it all day long. I read somewhere that 400 hours of YouTube videos are loaded every minute or something. You couldn't possibly watch everything. There's people, that's their whole life. But the important thing for us in this class is an extremely good problem solver. If I want to do something quick, I'll just type it into, like that thing about buying a hard drive. I don't really need to see a video on that. I just type that into the search engine and I want to read a couple articles, especially one that says, these are the 10 I recommend, if it's not an ad. If it's an ad, I know what ones they recommend, the one they make. Okay? So continuing on the taskbar, let me close this. How are we doing on time here? We've got a half hour or so. So this is the quick search bar. And remember, this search bar is different than the one, let me close this. This search bar is different than the one we were just talking about. This one searches your computer first and then reaches out to the internet for an answer. Okay? Now, these are all the programs that I could start these buttons are different programs that are on my computer. This is a shortcut for starting them. This is why you don't need a lot of icons all over the place. You can just put an icon, which is a little picture of the program, here on the taskbar. And it's very easy to just come here and double click on the W, which you'll learn what these mean when you get configured. And if you don't know, you just hover over it. And it says, it did momentarily here, Microsoft Word. I want to start that. So sometimes you single click on it, sometimes you double click. I can't remember which is which, so I always double click. Take my finger, and by the way, if you have a choice, that's a left click when I say click, not a right click, okay? Click on it, Microsoft Word starts. And remember what just happened? Microsoft Word was on our hard disk in here, and it just got transferred to RAM so the computer can work in it. I can type my letter here, and I'm good to go. Yes, you could put them in File Explorer under different folders. And we're probably going to touch on File Explorer was supposed to be a big part of this class, and I think I'm only going to give an overview of it. But that would probably be better. There's nothing really bad about having icons all over your desktop. Believe me, a lot of people do that. As I said at the very beginning of the class, one problem with that is when the computer starts, those icons aren't there. It actually reaches into computer memory and says, does this guy have any desktop icons? Yeah, he's got these. Okay, give them to me. I got to load them one at a time. It has to draw the picture of the icon, and then it has to label it whatever it is, Microsoft Word or whatever. Then do the next one, do the next one, do the next one. The other problem is, and if you're not real familiar with it, and usually people are because it's their computer, it might take a while to find it. You could use this search to find it. That's one of the things it would look at. It looks at everything on the computer and then it goes to the internet. But you're going to see when we go to File Explorer, there's a better way to store it, a more organized way. All right, so I opened this by double clicking here, and if you remember, how do I close my program here? I just go to the X and tap on it, or a left click. Also, I've got Excel, which is another Microsoft program. PowerPoint. What is this? Let's hover over this. Probably WordPad or TextPad. Oh, this one hover doesn't hover. That's interesting. Oh, there it is. Notepad. Notepad is a good way to type text. I'll just start it so you can see what I'm talking about. This is sort of the same thing as Microsoft Word, but not so fancy. Microsoft Word does everything in the world. It'd take you years to learn everything Microsoft Word can do. This is much simpler. It basically just types text. If you want to type a quick letter and print it, this would be a good way to do it. Or type a quick note to yourself and store it somewhere. Okay, now when I hit the X, it's probably going to ask me if I want to save this. Let's see. I'm going to try and close it. Ah, see, that's a nice little thing that Windows does for you. Do you want to save changes to untitled? You can save, don't save, or cancel. It's untitled because I didn't give it a title. So let me do that again, and I'm going to say don't save. I was just playing with it. This is Zoom, which is a meeting tool. Does anybody do Zoom meetings? Okay, so you guys know what that is. This is File Explorer, which I'm going to end with after I finish my taskbar. This is probably Access, I think. Access is another Microsoft Office Suite product. And by Office Suite, I mean usually you pay once and you get Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, and some other programs, and you can use them. Oh, somebody asked me about, I don't want to pay for a Microsoft Office product. Yeah, so while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go here into the search bar. This is on my computer somewhere, but I'm not sure. Why look at it when the computer can find it for me? And you might want to write this down. WordPad, one word. WordPad. And it found it. It says it's an app, and I'm going to tap on that. Watch this. Does that look like Microsoft Word that I just had open? But this is free. This is on your computer if you have a Windows computer. So why pay for Microsoft Office and get Word if all you're going to do is type a letter now and then? You can get this. It does, unlike that Notepad that I just had, which was very plain, we can highlight things, we can import pictures, we can do drawings. So this is a very good alternative to Microsoft Word. And it's not going to ask me if I want to save anything because I didn't actually do anything. So I'm going to close that. Okay? So this part of the taskbar is blank. And just to review, if you right-click on that, you get a little menu. And by the way, this is called a contextual menu. You right-click on something else, it'll look totally different. A different menu every time you right-click on something. And the only reason I'm reviewing this is to show you this is how we start Task Manager, in case you need to stop a program or see why your computer is running all so slowly. Okay? This is a new thing that Microsoft added. It gives you the temperature and the weather conditions. And that looks like right, 41 degrees and cloudy. And then it has kind of the news pop up here. And if you want to browse this and click on something, you can actually read these news articles. Or you can turn it off if you don't want it. These little icons are little different programs that are always running. Oh, you know what? This is the battery, as a matter of fact. I got 30 minutes left. Okay, so let's see if we make it. We only got 20 minutes left, so we're probably okay. Notice that, well, yeah, everybody's familiar with these battery indicators now, right? It's almost gone. It's almost empty, so it looks kind of mostly black and a little bit white. Hover over it, it'll tell you how many minutes it is. Of course, that's a guess. This is a volume. Oh, no, that's a crest on. Ooh, what's that doing in there? Okay, you won't have that on your computer. This is a little Wi-Fi symbol. I never figured out how to really describe that thing. I guess it's supposed to look like radio waves radiating out. If you're not connected to the internet, let me show you what that looks like. You may have to do this. I'm going to disconnect. And notice how this, I know it's small, but can you see that? That symbol has changed. It looks like a globe. That means you're not connected to the internet. I guess the globe stands for the world, and you're not connected to the world. So you want to fix that. So what you do is you click on it, and now it's looking out for the Wi-Fi networks, and it has found the Wolfeboro Public Library. These are printers that it's trying to connect to. And this is the printer up front, actually, so that's another printer. And WPL is one wireless network, and the public one is Wolfeboro Public Library. So choose that by clicking on it, and then hit connect. And notice your symbol has now changed from the world to the radio waves again. So you're connected to the internet. So you may have to do that if your computer, you'll click on something, it'll say no answer. I'm not connected to the internet. And it will give you some troubleshooting hints, usually are wrong. Usually it's something simple like I just need to get connected to the internet. Okay? Next, let me get rid of that, is a date. If you click and the time, and this time should be via the internet set correctly. I'm sure that's exactly right, 11:43. If you click on that, you get a nice calendar. And you can look next month if you're talking to somebody and say, well, what's good for next month? I'm free on the 14th. What about you? Okay? To get rid of that, you just click outside of it. Click in here is the notification sections. This is messages from your operating system to you. And reconnect your drive. Your file history drive was disconnected for too long. I'm not going to talk about that today, but that's telling me I have file history set up, which is a backup program, and it's supposed to be connected to an external drive, and I don't have the drive connected. What's going on? Okay. All right. And these are buttons that you can turn things on or off with. You can put it in airplane mode for when you're going to take off. You can, let's see, the network settings we already went over. I don't think there's too much here you're going to need. Night light turns it into a different kind of light, so it's nicer at night. That's about all you'd need there. You can also set your brightness condition right here. You can turn it up or down. We probably want to, well, I'll leave it where it is. If I was getting a low battery, which I am, I'd turn it down. I think we're going to make it. And here is the dumbest thing they've designed, I think. One last thing on the taskbar. See this little white line here? Can you see that? Supposedly, well, we're already on the desktop. Let's see, I got to open something up. Let me open it. It's a way to make it go to the desktop. Let's see if I can make it work. You have to get it just exactly right. Okay, I got it to work. Here's a far better way to get the desktop. Let me open up Word again. And I go to the Windows key. Remember I talked about that with the 4 little squares in it? hold the Windows key, and D for desktop, and the desktop comes up. That's very handy if you need to find an icon on there and you're in the middle of a program that's taken up the whole screen. A couple times a week I have to get back to the desktop very quickly, and when I learn that shortcut, I like it. I use it quite a bit.
Can you do that again?
Yep. So I undid it by doing it again. So let me make it even more apparent to you. Okay, desktop is gone. I could try, if I want to make it hard on myself, I could try and find this little line here and click on it. They made it as small as they possibly could, and you can still see it. I don't like that. Windows key and D together. And you don't have to do it perfectly. You can do the Windows key first and then D, and you go back to desktop.
Now, down.
What if I had 4 windows open?
Oh, okay,
Yeah. But to tell you the truth, Windows, there must be a rule. There must be a sign in the hallway there. Make sure there's 3 ways to do everything. You know, when they come up with a new product like Microsoft Word, or if they want to make a new Microsoft Word, they must have a team of, I don't know how many people. I'm sure 1,000 or more, and everybody's got something to do, right? So they make a change to something. And it takes forever to learn all the little ins and outs. But that's the quickest way. That's a good point. That would be, and I probably might consider doing that if I knew for sure one program was open. Let me just check my notes real quick. How are we doing? Oh, let's see. Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. That means Microsoft, the little line below there means Microsoft Word is open, or whatever this icon is. So it's open and running in RAM, even though we don't see it on the desktop. And if you click on it, oh, I did that too fast. If you hover over it and click on it, but sometimes you see it didn't do it. It pops up and has a little miniature picture of what you're doing, and then you just click on that and the whole thing opens up. And I'll show you another neat thing they did. Let me open another program that's going to not take too long here. Okay, so watch very carefully the little white lines. The window that's open in front actually has a longer and brighter white line. Watch me hit Notepad. Watch what happens. The line actually gets bigger. See how that line is bigger than the other line? Again, they could have just showed a white line there, but they added a little. They never get tired of adding little this and that's to it, and that's what they did. It's kind of cool. I didn't even know that till the other day. I never noticed it. All right, so I'm going to close this. I'm going to close Microsoft Word. And I think we covered the taskbar and everything on the desktop. I'm going to briefly go over Windows Explorer or File Explorer. Are there any questions before I do that? Okay, good. So File Explorer, there's several ways to open it. The best way, it always sits on the taskbar here. I did not put that there. That is installed with Windows, okay? Click on it, and it opens. Now, this is kind of a busy interface. I'll tell you that right now. This is something definitely you're going to watch on YouTube, and I'm going to give you a fantastic YouTube site. A guy that did 5 videos on how to use File Explorer, and I reviewed it before I taught this part because it's a busy website or a busy app, and there's a lot of stuff here, and he did an excellent job, far better than I can do. But let's do an overview here. This is basically all the files that are on this computer with 2 exceptions. Number 1, it's only the files that are available to this user who signed in, which is library guest. If I sign in as IT, what is it called on this computer? It doesn't say there. I think it's IT administrator, which is my account on here. It would look different. Another thing is, this does not include the files that Windows hides from you. There are files inside of Windows that if you could get to it and make a change, the computer in the industry, we say, is bricked. It doesn't do anything. You've ruined it. And if you don't make it, you won't even be able to make the change back. You just can't do anything with it. So Windows hides it from you. But other than that, with those 2 exceptions, these are all the files on this computer that I have access to. Here's how they arrange it. We have what's called a ribbon at the top, and Microsoft likes to do this on most of their products. These are all the little options we have. The Windows ribbon changes depending on what we're doing, okay? This is the navigation area, and this is the display area. So let's take a look at this. On the left side, it starts with quick access. These are groups of files that it's put over here that you might want to do. Like you might want to look through your documents. Here's all your documents. You might want to look through your pictures, which there probably aren't many in here, I don't think. No, those are empty, but there's just some documents. So let's look at that. When I click on document in the navigation area, in the display area, I get a list of documents. You see over here we have icons, and there's basically two types. There's the plain one that looks like, what do you think that looks like? A folder. It looks like this, much smaller. These are all different, colorful. Those are files. What's the difference between a file and a folder? A file is one of your paintings on your desktop. Each one of those is a file. It's a group of ultimately ones and zeros that all have the same purpose. They make a picture. They make a Word document. They can even make an application. Word is a file, a very big file, because Word does a lot of things. That's a file. What is a folder? It's a collection of files, just like this. And that's where this came from. It came from a filing cabinet. The disk drive is the cabinet. These are the folders, just like this is a folder. And these are the files, just like these are files. They're actually pages, but they're files. And of course, what really makes it make sense is when there's a lot of different folders, and each one is something different. So here we have custom office templates, and we have Zoom. So Zoom application has a folder because it probably has some, let's see what it looks like. I'll open it up. Oh, that's not even used. It's empty. Now, I did that without telling you. I want to see what's in this folder. I see the folder icon, so I know there should be a couple of different files in there, at least one. These just happen to be empty, probably because they haven't been used, because this is a computer just used temporarily for people in the conference rooms. So again, let's go over that again. I went down here, actually I started up here. I went here to Documents, and then, well, let's not do that. Let's start all over again. All right, so I go to Documents in the navigation area, and it opens in the display part. It shows two folders, which just happen to be empty, and then a bunch of files. Notice on the file, let's pick one here, Mike's class. That's not this class, that was the last class. It says the date modified. That's the last time I worked on it, last day rather, and even the time. It's a Microsoft Edge, so it's something that I did in Microsoft Edge, and it tells us how big it is, how many bits it is, actually how many bytes it is, because K stands for 1,000, and we know a capital B stands for byte. So this file's size is 272 kilobytes, 1,000 bytes. Up here on the ribbon, see where it says, now this is where it gets complicated, where you're going to watch that guy's videos. You hit View, and then I can change how these files and folders are displayed. Right now I have details. Watch this. Now I've changed everything into icons. Just same thing if that's the way you prefer to work. Microsoft, everything has to have at least 3 different ways of doing it. I like either list, like this. I don't like pictures, so now it's a list. Just a little tiny icon with mostly text. And I think details right next to it is even better, because I need to see a date. When I'm looking for a file, if I know it's something I just saved today and I didn't pay attention to where it went, I'll look for today's date. Because if I just save something, it's probably not this one that's 2020, is it? It's more like one that's going to be February 15th, 2023. Ah, that must be it. Okay? That's just one of the many changes you can make here. All right, the last thing I'm going to show you about File Explorer before I tell you where the videos are is, see where it says Search Documents? This is the same as the quick search down at the bottom, but it only searches inside File Explorer. But File Explorer is the majority of files that are on your computer, so it's very useful. So when I say search downloads, it changed to search downloads. When I hit documents, it says search documents. And by the way, here's OneDrive on here. It's part of File Explorer. And I don't think we're even going to get over that in the next class, but if you make an appointment with me, we'll go over that. This is another section in the navigation menu. This PC, what they really mean by that is this hard drive, the hard drive on this computer. All right? And these are the folders that are underneath that hard drive. 3D objects, I don't know what that is. That's always on there. I don't know what that is. Desktop is the desktop icons. Those are the icons from the desktop. And that's where the computer goes to look for those, to draw them every time you start up. Fortunately, there's only a few of them. Documents. Downloads. This is very helpful when you download something and it disappears. It's usually on the top right, it shows a little thing, okay, I'm downloading, I'm done. And when it's done, sometimes it just goes away. Oh my God, I'll never find it. Probably went to downloads. Or you could do a search right here, right? And network, it can actually look at the other computers on your network. I don't know if anything will come up here. Network discovery's turn. Okay, I don't want to get into that. That's, you have to turn on network discovery so it can see the other computers who want to do that. So what I promised you, a very, very good course on how to use File Explorer. And I'm sure we'll cover more of it next week because it's a big part of the genealogy course. Probably because there's so much information to store. They do go over that. I was hoping to go over it a lot better than we did today, but let me give you some homework. All right, this is going to sound funny. This is the guy's name on YouTube that you want to go into the search. I'll do it right now. We're going to do it together. Open up any browser. Go up into the search bar slash, hurry Mike, hurry. Okay, I got to close that first. Is this timing or what? YouTube. Hit enter. Select YouTube. Search bar. Click on it. Nerd, N-E-R-D, Sidekick. Sidekick. Yep. Nerd space Sidekick. And then help it out a little bit and say File Explorer. You don't have to do that. You can see all his other videos, but he makes a lot of them. And then hit enter.
What's after nerd? YouTube
Nerd space Sidekick.
Space side.
S-I-D-E-K-I-C-K. If you didn't put the space in, I'm sure it would just correct it. Here's the first one. See this? It says, how to use Windows File Explorer, part 1 of 5, 19 minutes. Part 2 of 5, 14 minutes. Part 3 of 5, Part 4 of 5, Part 5 of 5. Probably the only one you really don't need is 5 of 5. All 4 other ones you'll find very, very useful. Because I just touched on the very tip. It's like I showed you around the Titanic. I said, that's a ship. Any questions? It's just so complicated. I'm sorry we ran out of time and we ran out of battery. But does everybody have that? Nerd Sidekick. Not the only place on YouTube that has videos about that. There's probably thousands of. This guy, you can see his picture there. He's not a nerd. He's a guy that looks like probably a high school science teacher. Extremely good explainer. And he's always pulling it up on his computer, which you can see just like here. This is what you do. Do this. Well, let me do that again. Do this. Touch this and do this. He's fantastic. I've learned a lot from him. Everything I know about File Explorer, I learned from him. Okay? All right, I'm going to shut down before I die. And if there are any questions, I will, or if you want to go, it is noon, but if there are any questions, I'll stay.